Bum, ba, ba, bum, 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 ba, ba, bum, 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 ba, ba, bum. Welcome to episode 87 of The School of Shred. Welcome, everybody. Go ahead and jump on, tune on. Welcome to the show today. We are almost at episode 100. How are you all doing? Who's been here since the beginning? Have you been here since the beginning? The beginning of this thing? This holistic health and fitness vehicle where we start to connect the dots between the mental health, spiritual health, and physical health. Through sculpting the physical body, we can sculpt our mental health, our spiritual health. And that's what we're going to talk about today. We're going to talk about hypnotizing habits, okay, on episode 87 here at the School of Shred. This is the one and only, the almighty School of Shred. We're going to talk about trance today. We're going to talk about hypnotic rhythm, which is one of my favorite authors, Napoleon Hill. God bless Napoleon Hill. If you've never read any of his books, do yourself a favor and go to Amazon right now and order some books, or go to the bookstore. Think and Grow Rich, Outwitting the Devil, Success Through a Positive Mental Attitude, 3 Feet from Gold, Own Your Mind, How to Own Your Mind. Those are just a few of his great books. A pivotal role or a pivotal mentor in my life, just through his books. But anyway, we're going to talk about hypnotic habits today. So today, what I want you to do, this is going to be a drill. I want you to perform this drill today with me. So if you got a pen and a piece of paper handy, let's go ahead and grab that. I want to try and help you locate some habits that maybe we can change today. Okay, because this show is about helping you change. This show is about change, positive change. All right, so as we're jumping on here, go ahead and throw a flex emoji in the comments. You know what we do here. Throw a flex emoji in the comments. We already got some people going. Instagram, participate. YouTube, participate. If you're in your car listening to this and you're just listening to the audio, I want you to throw your arm up and flex, baby. It's Wednesday. All right, so the show's here Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, all that jazz. Spotify and iTunes, you can find it. Just go to theschoolofshred.com. You can also follow me on, or not, just go to The School of Shred, and then you can go to theschoolofshred.com if you want to learn more about the school. And if you want to follow me on Instagram, Instagram's a little different. It's John Reed Fitness, JohnReedFitness. All right, so episode 87. Hypnotic habits. So here's the thing here. On my notes, I want you to write down one habit that's no longer serving you. Okay, so what's one habit that's no longer serving you right now, today? Think about it. I'm going to give you a nice little list here that I've come up with. But this is not limited to this list. These are just a couple that I was thinking of this morning when I was prepping for the show. What's one habit no longer serving you? It could be negative self-talk, smoking, drinking, too much television, too much social media, too much news, especially right now. Be careful, boy. You better be careful with the news right now. You better be careful. It could be stress eating. All right, and there's a whole long list that you could come up with. But what's one habit that's no longer serving you? I recently read a really good book, and it talked about or explained habits, how they're formed, and how what happens is it's a routine that's kind of in the middle. It's a routine that's sandwiched in between a cue and a reward. And so one of the things that we can do when we want to change something is if we change the routine, but we keep the cue and we keep the reward, that's a great way to change our habits. And this book claims that's how you do it. So you don't try to get rid of everything, all the old things, because you're going to have cues. So like if you quit smoking and you get to a break at work and you're going to go smoke a cigarette, that's your cue, the break. Or if you have some type of fight or flight response, you want to stress eat, that's a cue. So with this habit that you're thinking of right now, whatever it is, whatever the negative habit that's no longer serving you, the habit we want to shred today. What's your cue that gets you into this habit? What's the thing that cues you into a routine? Is it a fight or flight response? An epinephrine, cortisol release where you feel stressed? An emotional trigger, maybe a feeling of inadequacy, maybe a feeling of failure, maybe a feeling of overwhelm. That is your cue to do the habit that is no longer serving you. The cue is the Kickstarter. It's basically the spark that creates this habit that we fall into. It could be the time of day, depending on what time of day it is. If 5 o'clock and you have a drink every night, time of day could be a cue. Is it your environment? Maybe just getting home, walking through the door is its own cue to get you into this habit cycle. Okay, the habit cycle, again, you guys, is cue. There's a cue that cues you into the routine. You go into your routine, and then that causes a reward system, and then the reward goes back into the cue. So, and then you got to identify what your reward is. So what's the reward for the routine that you do that's part of this habit that's no longer serving you? So say if it's stress eating, what's the reward? What's the reward? Is it a sense of control? Is it normalcy, like just the habit itself? Is it turning your brain off if you're watching a lot of television? I hear that a lot with clients. I hear that a lot, which is like, oh, I just want to be able to turn my brain off. So I have a drink and I watch television. Nothing wrong with that sometimes. But if it's no longer serving you and you've identified it as an issue, then you want to start looking at that. Turning your brain off isn't always the best thing. That's basically what trance is when you're no longer actively thinking about a task. You just do it. It's like when you go to work and you don't know how you got there. Like you were thinking the whole time. You're in trance. Napoleon Hill calls it hypnotic rhythm. And in his book, Outwitting the Devil, which is a great book, one of my favorite books I've ever read, he has this hypothetical conversation with the devil, and the devil basically controls people through fear by making them drift off of their purpose, is what's talked about in this book. And when you drift off your purpose long enough, you get into what's called hypnotic rhythm, and you just start doing things that you don't really thinking about anymore. Hypnotic rhythm can work in your favor. So hypnotic rhythm could be you just grab your shoes and you go to the gym after work because that's just what you do. That's a habit. Hypnotic rhythm could just be called a habit. So you've identified your cue. You know what the routine is. If the routine is you're overeating, maybe you're smoking, you're drinking, there's negative self-talk. That could be one. Toxic self-talk. You get into this cycle. Well, what's the cue? Basically the trigger. Okay, the trigger. What's the cue or the trigger that starts the routine? And then you have the reward. And knowing the cue and the reward is important, because now what I'm going to ask you to do is, if you have identified this, listening to this right now, you've identified your cue. This is what gets you into this routine, this self-destructive routine. Then you have the reward system that happens. You know what your reward is. Maybe the reward is that it confirms your suspicion, the ego. It confirms the ego's suspicion. So like negative self-talk, I know this one for me, and you might be able to relate. Negative self-talk is, something happens that's really challenging, and your ego instantly is like, oh, you're a failure. You're not meant to do this. And then it confirms your suspicion, which is like the reward system, which makes your ego comfortable again. And so then it's this repetitive cycle. So now what this book that I'm talking about, that I'm referring to, it's called The Power of Habit. What it talks about is that now if you just you have the cue, you have the reward, you take the routine and you swap in a different routine. So now when you get that cue, whatever it is, maybe you go for a walk instead of have a cigarette at the break. Maybe you do that, right? Maybe when you get home from work, instead of pouring a cocktail, maybe you make a cup of tea, or maybe you go for a walk. And then you have to try and make sure that you get the same reward as you did before, and you keep those things the same. Maybe if you want to jump on social media, you have a different cue. Maybe you have mints that are by your desk, right? And every time you want to grab your phone, you catch yourself, you grab a mint. Okay, but you got to make sure that reward is the same, whatever it is for you. So, and when you do this, this is how you can get back into a hypnotic rhythm where you're not actively trying to create habits. They just start to overtake you. So this Power Habit book is really cool because it shows in some of these rat studies that brain activity in the beginning of a new task is very, very high. But eventually, as soon as these rats figured out this little puzzle they were having them do with chocolate, the brain activity goes down. And then the brain activity actually spikes before there was even a cue. And so what happens is that the longer you do something, the less brain activity it takes. In the beginning, to create a new habit, it takes a lot of brain activity. To get home after work and go to the gym as opposed to eat, maybe pour a drink, that takes a lot of activity in the beginning. But realize that in the beginning, that's when it's new and it's novel. It's not always going to be like that. It becomes really, really easy to become fit and healthy the longer you do it. And this has now been shown in science through the power of habit. So your habits are hypnotizing you over time. They can be beneficial or they can be self-destructive. So as you have this pen and journal out today, what's one habit that's no longer serving you? What's the cue that gets you into the routine that creates the reward? And then when you identify those three things, the cue, the routine, the reward, what's one positive routine that you can swap in between the cue and the reward to try and become better today? That's all I got for you guys today. That's episode 87 of the School of Shred. November's right around the corner, folks. You could be in the next class. We go deep into this stuff. You get weekly assignments. You get weekly meetups, live classes. We are doing live classes every week from wherever you are in the world. Doesn't matter. You could be far and wide. You could be close. But this is all social distance proof. And I lead classes every week for you. We go over our assignments. We chit-chat as a community, an association, and as a mastermind group who wants to get better, healthier, and stronger, and have more energy, power, and production in our life. So you could join November. You go to theschoolofshred.com. You can sign up, and you will be on your way. With that, I want you guys to stay strong and healthy in body, stay relentless and energized in spirit, and stay determined in your pursuits today. If you guys are still with me, throw another flex emoji in the comments. I hope you guys learned something today. We'll see you tomorrow for episode 88. Go shred the day and get better in every way. All right, folks. We'll see you tomorrow.